Hello, welcome to what I'm calling the long form show, where I answer your questions and I generally get a chance to talk about things a little bit more long form, and we'll see how this develops over time. It's the morning time. I have my heated blanket and my brain feels fresh, so I'm going to go ahead and answer your questions. If you just started following me recently, I go by Brown. I have been doing content creation since 2022, and I've been doing it full time since 2024. I started on TikTok, and then I started just posting my videos on Instagram, and after that, I started posting them on YouTube. And it's funny, YouTube has been a really hard nut to crack for me because I'm really like a 3 minute video girl, and I'm okay with that. But YouTube is not really okay with it. Sorry, I'm just wiping something off of my screen that makes me look like I have a mustache when I sit back. Anyway, uh, so YouTube has been kind of a hard nut to crack, and I feel like there's not as much community on YouTube, and it's been hard for me to connect with those who have found me on YouTube. But I find that each profile, each platform has kind of a different vibe, and I reach different people, and that's really valuable to me. So I want to make YouTube videos feel more organic for me, and I think that that's one of the ways to do it is to do shows like this. And I get to show you things about my life. I brought my toothbrush. So I decorated my toothbrush this morning. The story behind this is I bought these. I've always been told I have a really small mouth, and so I always need really tiny toothbrushes. And I always feel like toothbrushes are too big for me. So I was at the grocery store and I was like, oh, perfect. They was just in a package. I was like, perfect, small toothbrushes. I brought them home and they weren't toothbrushes. They were toothbrush heads for babies, for children. So then I went and bought the children's bottom, and it came with all these stickers for children, and so I just put my own stickers on it. This is my child toothbrush for my child size mouth. Okay, so I've got a list of 7 questions here. Let's get into them. I think that I will try to spend about an hour, so maybe if I'm under time, I'll just select more questions. Where do I want to start here? Adria Flora on TikTok asks, you talked about the 1950s writer on revolution. Do you see the middle class falling into poverty and revolting? So, the author she's talking about is Eric Hoffer, who wrote The True Believer, and I'm reading his second book, which he felt was his best work, called The Ordeal of Change. And I've loved both of them, but I agree with him that I like The Ordeal of Change better. I don't, oh, I need my water. Hold on. The True Believer is a book about mass movements, and it's really helpful for me to read about it because it's the way that an outside observer in different times views revolutions of different kinds. And what really struck me about this book is when you read literature from another time, there's always these givens that are blind spots for people. So, for example, when I read Eleanor Roosevelt, she, in her later writings at least, has this given where she's like, of course, communism is bad and capitalism is good. And reading that in, 80 years later, I'm like, oh, that's not a given at all for us today. And so when I read The True Believer, I find very few of those sort of logical fallacies, and the writing feels very evergreen. Uh, I said on TikTok, the TikTok video I made, that now and then there are little words like he uses the word invalid. Uh, I don't know who he's referring to, maybe people who can't work, but it's not a word we use anymore. So there's things like that. The question is, do I see the middle class falling into poverty and revolution? I think the middle class has already fallen into poverty. Um, One of the things that the book says is you get revolutions when people become frustrated, and you tend to get situations of frustration when people have sort of fallen into poverty, when people who are previously well off are less well off. So he calls this the new poor. Versus the old poor, people who are used to being poor, they don't have these same kinds of uprisings because there's not frustration. People who are used to their relative level of poverty have stronger communities. There's a number of factors. And so, yeah, I think our middle class already is in poverty relatively. And one of the things that causes the tremendous frustration is the wealth distribution. The fact that we watch people have so much more, grossly more than others. It's the inequality itself that breeds the frustration and the hatred. Humans want to feel like they are on the same level as each other. That's what creates connection. I often talk about how you're never going to create connection with someone through your perfection, through having more, through being better. You're always going to be able to create connection through common struggle, common difficulty, connecting through the imperfections of life. And so vulnerability is way more important for community building than having more, doing more, being better. So I think that we are in the revolt process. Uh, when I tune in with spirit, one of the messages that I've been getting recently is, and if you haven't been following me for long, hi, I'm a psychic. When I tune in, the message that I'm getting is like this period of time could have been riddled with lots of world war, lots of conflict, more like World War II. Uh, and there's been a series of synchronicities to help this not happen. So even though we hate Trump and it's really not a good look for the nation and the world order is changing and we don't like a lot of these political divides that are happening, Trump is ultimately a blunderer, not a an effective dictator. A dictator for sure, someone who will not follow the Constitution or follow the law. But ultimately, the complete lack of skill in implementing anything is kind of the best that this situation could have gone. Overall, humanity is going through a great learning process. And another bit of information that I got is that we go through these learning processes over time. How do I want to say this? So each time new technology brings information to the masses, you get this massive upshift where normally information is held by the privileged. It is not freely given to anybody, and it's protected through uh, financial access, through access of learning, so access to education, not being able to read the language that the books are written in, for example. Um, there's an example the church used to do mass in Latin, and the Bible was in Latin, and so if you didn't speak Latin, then you couldn't read the Bible, and so you had to take the church's word, what the Bible said, and then the Bible was translated and made accessible, and people could have their own interpretations, and that gave them power. But what always happens when a new technology brings more information to the masses is there's a wisdom gap. And so people now have information who didn't previously have it, but they've not uh, in living memory uh, gained the full knowledge of history, for example. So I don't have enough memory, I don't have enough history lessons at this point to understand what the revolt was from the invention of the printing press. I think the Crusades were before. But I know racism became much worse after the printing press was invented and books were widely distributed. But I think that that's when anti-African racism became more common. And previous to that, there was a lot more racism against Eastern Europeans. And Africa was relatively wealthy, while Europe was relatively poor. And that flipped after the printing press. And it's a dynamic we still use today, we still live with today. It doesn't have to exist. Um, what was the other thing I was saying? Back on my line of thinking. Oh, so every time a technology is invented, we go through this wisdom process. And so we're going through one. We went through one after the Industrial Revolution, the revolutions, the socialist revolutions around the turn of the century, leading into Germany of the 1930s, was very much a response to many more groups of people having access to information. And today it is a response to the internet. Same thing. One of my favorite things that I ever heard, and I can't remember what substantiates this, so you can take my words for what they are and maybe look for it online. But a friend parroted that one of the best indicators that the birth rate is going to go down somewhere is that women have access to the internet. And I love that. I'm like, yeah, because that's empowering and it gives people the ability to make active choices about what they want when they have more information. And very much like my life purpose is to empower people in order to make conscious decisions. Uh, I am floored at how many people are behaving essentially automatically. And once they become empowered to make positive choices for themselves and basically just build bridges to the things that are supportive to them, it's life changing. Most of the business coaches and spiritual teachers that I come in contact with have found that level of being where they have a conscious pause, they can make choices about what they do. And the biggest difference between those who are helping others and those who need help is often that ability to be conscious about choice, because it means that you have the ability to change your beliefs and all the rest. There's a triangle that I really like that I'll go over. It's in my book that I'm writing, and I often talk about it. Um, you have beliefs, actions, and thoughts. And it's like if you change one, the other two have to change. So if you change your actions, your beliefs about yourself and your thoughts will change anyway. But you can change any one of them, but if you change one, both the others have to change. So I love that. I can't remember what it's called. Second question by Trauma Integrated Growth on Instagram. What is your experience sleeping in separate rooms from your boyfriend? I don't know any couples who are navigating that smoothly. Yeah, so I don't know that my personal experience is going to be super helpful to other people because my boyfriend and I are polyamorous, so we're navigating a lot of different things that other couples are not simply navigating. And I nested this question here specifically because it relates back to how being able to just make a choice about how I want to engage with our existing culture. That's why I've chosen to be polyamorous. There are so many things that I was just given, that I was just programmed with, that in my adult life I've just been like, I think that's bullshit, and I don't want to just operate on what I was given. Monogamy is one of those things for me, and I came to it after a long, protracted process of being really unhappy in monogamous relationships, and I essentially just went like, what if I could just accept myself as a polyamorous person? And it turned out that that was way better for me, and that I didn't have to be shaming myself the entire time about having a natural proclivity to want to have relationships with many people at one time. So, yeah, my boyfriend and I are polyamorous, and not only do we sleep in separate beds, but there are many nights that I don't come home at all because I'm with my other boyfriend. Um, and yeah, we started sleeping in separate beds once we moved in together. It was a nice transition when we moved in together that I was like, by the way, I'm going to have my own room with my own bed. And that was actually really freeing for me because I'm such a light sleeper. And try as he might, my boyfriend is not able to not snore. And we even like got him a CPAP machine. He got diagnosed with sleep apnea, and it didn't really help. Like, even though he's not snoring, he like tosses and turns at a certain time at night, and I am just like Princess and the Pea. I wanted to say Thumbelina. It's funny. Princess and the Pea. Like, if anything is too scratchy or too hot or too loud or too anything, it wakes me up. I have such a sensitive sleep cycle. There are not many things that I would change from my life, including going through bankruptcy, including like going through really bad addiction when I was in my teenage years. I would absolutely change being a light sleeper. Fucking hate it. Don't love that for me in this lifetime. Anyway, so yeah, he's sad about it. Um, he was definitely sad when we first started implementing it. He was like, maybe we're not a real couple. If we sleep in separate beds, I'm just like, oh my God. So we've had to navigate it for sure. We have conversations about it, but the way that we actually practice it is I have my own bed in here. You can't see it, but it's right over there. And this is like my little space. My office is in here. This is what it would be like to have a reading with me. This is what your view would look like. I sit in this chair. I have my bookshelf right here. So cute, so perfect. I do all my journaling here. So this is just like my little workspace. And so I start sleeping at night in the other room with him. And then at some point when he starts snoring or I wake up, I'll come in here, and sometimes it's like 12, sometimes I'll stay as long as 2 a.m., but not much past that. There's just a certain time where he starts to flop. My friend Sarah calls that male flopping. I think men flop more when they sleep. Anyway, but yeah, I love my boyfriend, and I'm just one of the things that I'm learning in relationship that was so valuable to me is that I need to do what I need to do in order to make my life sustainable. A woman who is in our polyamory group, we have a polyamory processing group called Many Loves that I helped create with another guy called Jeff. Um, one of the things that she shared with me, she's been married for 15 years and is a creative spirit like me. She said, I catered to my husband for many years, and then I realized just like I don't have to do that. He's not leaving me. He feels insecure. He might be upset, but he's not going anywhere. So why do I need to overextend myself for that? And so I took that to heart, and that's worked really well for me. I don't know what other problems people have. Probably they don't have other spaces that they can sleep in. This is the biggest house I've ever lived in since I've been um, yeah, since I've been 18, probably the house I grew up in, and this house is 2 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. So yeah, we feel extremely lucky to be here. We want to stay here as long as we can. It's just a rental, but why was I bringing that up? Oh, people having space. Like when we stay in hotels, we're going to stay in a hotel for a little staycation at the end of the month, and um we just suffer. I suffer. He sleeps and I don't, and I have nowhere to go, and it sucks. And I'm not going to be able to sleep. And with my other boyfriend, it's the same way. His daughter is moving out of the house soon, and so I'm like, good, I'll have somewhere to sleep now when you start snoring. Because it pretty much just happens with every partner, and it gets worse as I get older, unfortunately. So that is that answer. I don't know if that was helpful to anybody, but that's my experience. Caverlil on Instagram. What is your take on ascension? Do you feel collective ascension is possible? So this is kind of the thing. Spirituality takes a lot of discernment, uh, and this is one of those areas where there's not a lot of agreement from different psychics and different like schools of belief. The idea of ascension could be a lot of different things. This could be related to Dr. Robert Hawkins. He wrote Power versus Force. He also wrote another book called Letting Go, and he's written all his books look like this. They have like one side and one side. They probably mean something. But he wrote the scale of um, calibration. So there's like uh, anger, was it courage calibrates at 200. Above courage is neutrality. And there's all these like different levels. And you can sort of calibrate your internal environment to different spiritual principles, basically. And there are some that are corrosive to the body, and there are some that are building for the body. And this system tends to be the basis of a lot of spiritual bypassing for people. Um, so you could have ascension like that. There's also kind of the new earth idea where a lot of psychics are saying that the earth is ascending, that a lot of souls have come during this time to help the new earth come through, to help a lot of humanity take the next step of evolution. And I think that that's happening. I don't know. I liked, uh, what's her name? I wanted to say Sylvia Brown. That's not her name. Dolores Cannon has done work on like star seeds and light workers and all that stuff. And everyone's information is going to be just a little bit different on this. So it's like, who do you like to listen to? Nobody is an authority on what's actually happening spiritually. I do believe in reincarnation, and I believe some souls are older souls. I believe in soul families, and I think that what I've observed is there have been these waves of different light workers. There was the first wave, like around the baby boomer generation. There were these what appear to me to be light workers, which are just people who are more, they're older souls and they've come here to try to raise the vibration of the planet in sort of these groupings. And my sponsor in Narcotics Anonymous is one of them. She is just wise, and she always has been in a way that I feel I've always been wise, and I'm sort of growing into my wisdom. It's hard to be 12 and be wise. It's much easier to be 50 and be wise. But my sponsor is like that, and they all came of age around the 80s. So, Caroline Mace, a lot of our good psychologists, like these light workers, they don't just work in spirituality. And some of them in a particular lifetime don't necessarily navigate spirituality. They don't necessarily believe in it, but they are deeply spiritual. Gabor Mate is one of them. So this sort of wave of light workers came of age around the 80s and did a lot of their writing and work in the 80s. Abraham Hicks, another one, same around the same age. And Melody Beatty, they're giving me that one. Um, and they did a lot to expand our ideas of childhood trauma, psychology, and beginnings of like sort of somatic work. Donna Eden's another one they just gave me. So this is sort of the first wave, second wave, people around my age, and I've seen some people in between. I dated a guy who was born in the late 70s, early 80s. Generally, the light workers who came earlier, they just had different paths, different things that they were here to do. A lot of them were here to write books and expand our knowledge of things. The people who have come around my age seem to be coming for more revolutionary purposes. They're sort of building on what the baby boomer people wrote for us, and we're continuing it and doing different stuff with it. But I think a lot of us are not necessarily writers. We're not necessarily expanding the information. We're sort of working from what's already been created and inspiring people around it. So I think that I will probably be a writer, and the more that I explore my life purpose, it seems that I am here to write. Um, Kind of unfortunately for me, I don't feel prepared to write. I don't feel I have the skill, so I better be practicing. Um, but yeah. So, as far as Ascension, I think that it cannot be stopped at this point. Some psychics say we have already ascended. We've already changed timelines. I don't know about all that, but I do think that I'm here to raise the energy vibration of the earth. And even if all of that is BS and none of this exists, uh, it is a positive intention for me to have, and it's a thing that empowers me and helps me do good things in the world. So I've always just been like, well, if all of this is fake, if none of this is real, and I'm just delusional, at least I have a positive delusion. At least I have something that makes me feel effective and satisfied and empowered in the world. And that's good enough for me. All right. Holly Schomer on Instagram. How should we collectively be responding to medical debt? And then another person echoed that comment and asked about student loan debt. So, um, there's what we should be doing collectively and what we should be doing on an individual level. So, obviously, on the individual level, we have to do what works for our individual situation. I just went through financial destruction of my life. I go through these rebirth processes. Spirit has showed me the way that my life path happens. I don't get to do like this. I don't get to do like any I don't know. I don't do any regular pattern. The only pattern I do is like this. So I'm like, I'm on my high. Oh, I'm losing everything. Okay, and come back around. I understand. Like that's what mine looks like. And they were giving me a sweeping motion, and I come back and I sweep up what was left over. So I just went through one of those. I was on a high and then I lost everything. I bought a farm, I lost the farm, I filed for bankruptcy, I got rid of my car. I was like as poor as I was when I was 20 years old. And I started working at a coffee shop and doing my content creation part-time. So having just gone through this and having a bunch of shit that I couldn't pay for, my experience is that if you have a bunch of debt, they will always allow you to discharge that debt and start over. It is to every advantage of the system to allow you to do that so that you can continue to borrow money. Uh, and this goes with the way that I understand the economy as it is now since about the 1970s. Uh, what's his name? I cannot remember his name. Dr. Richard. Ugh. Anyway, I love him. He's a sociologist. Uh, not a sociologist. He's an economist, but he talks about socialism a lot. Uh, I'm so sorry, I can't remember your name. You follow me on Instagram. I was like, so. Anyway, but he shows a graph and household incomes sort of level off at the 70s. They stop going up even though productivity goes up. And he goes, stock market has gone up, GDP has gone up, incomes have not. Then what is this? It's all debt. It's all household debt. That's the only thing that it could be. And so I sort of understand our economy to be a house of cards of household debt. And what keeps it going, what keeps that engine going is people going into more debt. This won't be able to happen forever. And if we don't rectify the situation, we will end up in a massive decline. We've already slowly started to decline, and from what I get, intuitively, we can level that off. We don't have to just go off a cliff. Anyway, all that is to say, my personal experience is that everything about the system wanted to allow me to wipe the slate clean and continue to borrow money, to become a borrower again. And every step along the way, they asked me, what is your ability to pay? That is the only thing that they asked. So, in that way, it very much accommodates for disability, for the inability to pay. However, if I overwork myself, if I overextend myself, the system doesn't have anything built in to recognize that. I actually have to materialize that into the world. So, if I can't work, I actually have to not work or work to the best of my ability and say, hey, I cannot pay because I cannot work. If I work anyway and do something that I can't do that actually hurts my body, that is unsustainable for me, the system doesn't go, oh, I'm so sorry that you did something that was unsustainable for you. We'll pay you all that money back. So I realized, like, oh, okay, so I just have to show that I can't work by not working, which is true for me because I'm chronically ill. And I had not thought of doing that my entire 20s. I instead decided to burn myself out. So my experience was if I just work to the best of my ability, to literally the extent of my ability, the system will meet me where I am. I had to accept a lower standard of living. I experienced no loss in happiness, no loss in being okay. My community actually grew because I was walking everywhere and uh, discovering things I had never discovered. I lived in intentional community with 6 roommates, and though that became a little bit of a sensory thing, that's why I ended up moving in with my boyfriend and out of community. Pretty much everything about my life got better, and I didn't experience any uh, lowering of well-being, which was such an amazing thing to learn. So coming all back around, medical debt, um, I won't pay my medical debts anymore. I had an experience during the time that I literally couldn't pay my bills where I would just be like, I gotta get this blood work done. I'm so sorry, Quest Diagnostics. I will make amends for this one day, but not right now. And I would just yeet them. I would just ignore them. And when it comes to debt, there's a little bit of an integrity thing. There's a spiritual integrity thing or a morality thing that I think is real, which is I recognize the debts that I have to the universe. I recognize that I have received a service that I have not paid for. I think that our system totally brings that out of whack and totally shames debt in a way that is not appropriate. However, there is a little bit of karma there. And what I've at least read spiritually, we need to atone for our karmic debts just by taking responsibility for them, by taking emotional responsibility. And it's something we say in Narcotics Anonymous. My sponsor says, if you're willing to take responsibility for the consequences, you're allowed to do anything you want. And I'm like, interesting. All right. But what usually goes with that is here is the easier, softer way. Here is the better way to do it. You can do whatever you want, but here's the wise way. So I won't pay my medical debts anymore, for the most part, unless they need a credit card up front. I just had to take the wiener dog to the vet, and it was $2,000 because he had to go to the ER, and they asked for that money up front. They're smart. They know if the bill comes in the mail, I won't pay it. And part of this goes with my beliefs. Like, I believe that we live in a corrupt system that doesn't take care of human well-being. So, part of that is this does not work with my value system. This is a little bit of my anarchist calisthenics. If you've ever seen my video about anarchist calisthenics, we need to practice small habits of non-compliance so that we can be non-compliant where it's really important. If we're out of practice with non-compliance, then it'll cause anxiety if we're non-compliant for any reason. So I don't think anybody should pay their medical debts if they can avoid it. I have heard that medical debts going on your credit report is a HIPAA violation. And I have heard so many crazy stories about people getting like $200,000 bills decreased to like 2,000. So I just think medical debt is in a really strange place. The entire health insurance system is crazy. Most people will know medical billing is crazy. Like if an aspirin costs 5 cents, the the way that our insurance system works is the insurance companies negotiate for these massive discounts. And if the hospital doesn't give the discount to the insurance company will complain. So, what the hospitals have done is artificially inflated their prices to make it look like they're giving a discount to the insurance company. So, on the bill ledger, it'll say two aspirin, $20 reduced reduced $19 or whatever it is. So they only charged $1 to the insurance company when it really only cost them 5 cents. But guess what? If you don't have health insurance and you're just paying cash, they will make you pay the $20, the sticker price. All that our health insurance system is a fucking cartel. It is literally a special pricing system for just for a middleman, and it is controlled by the middleman, um, by the lobbyists for the middleman. So one of the reasons that I'm able to sort of like understand this morally for myself is I don't respect that system because I think it is like mob boss shit. And so, yeah. Anyway, mostly I won't pay my medical debt. Um, unless I have to pay for it up front. Or like that Quest Diagnostics bill, I eventually had to pay it because I had to go back to Quest Diagnostics. So eventually I do pay them, but I pay them on my own time. Very autistic, very autistic way to deal with it. Student loan debt is different because as it stands now, it will never come off of your credit report. There's no way to discharge it. I personally think, and I've not heard from Spirit on this, but I have heard about health insurance. So I don't know why, maybe it's undecided in the collective. I don't think there is any sustainable way for that to go on. I think most millennials will not pay their student loan debt for the same reasons that it's a bullshit system. And I don't think there's any way for our economy to continue on with one third or one fourth of the adult population with tanked credit scores. Uh, it would invalidate the entire credit score system. Either that or lending agencies would just have to lower their credit standards. Everything about the system is going to want to cater to people being allowed to borrow more money. So I think eventually the federal government will either forgive the loans, um, or something will happen with that credit report thing. They passed this legislation in the 1970s to make student loan debt not dischargeable in bankruptcy because the the rate of payback on student loans, I just remind you, nobody used to have student loans. That didn't used to be like a thing. People would have max like maybe $1,000 in student loans. Like this was not a thing. And what they found as they started in implementing the federal student loan program is that nobody would repay their loans because it's just knowledge. They would get the knowledge and then they'd be like, I'm not paying that back. I have the knowledge now. So it was just like not a very good system. And so they're like, oh, okay, we got to make it so this is not dischargeable or literally nobody pays it back. So they're learning that they're still not able to get people to pay it back. And I don't think people should pay them back. But student loans are more difficult because the what people should do is join a debt collective. There is one on TikTok. Let me get the name for you because they're the largest one, I think, and large numbers of people will need to group together in order to lobby the US government to essentially forgive all student loans, all federal student loans. Let's see what it's called. It's just called Debt Collective. That's awesome. The nation's first union of debtors. Join us, debtcollective.org. All right, next question. At Belle Flanus on Instagram, how did you arrive at the spiritual practices and understandings you have come to? Did you begin in any particular spiritual tradition initially? So, I was not born into any spiritual tradition. I do believe in soul planning, so I believe that I chose to be in this particular family, that my soul group decided to inhabit this particular family. Uh, I think that this family was chosen uh, for the addictive potential. I was one of the children that was going to have the highest addictive potential, and I believe that that was wanted for this lifetime, particularly because I would end up in Narcotics Anonymous. So, addiction is one of those uh, conditions that people deal with that basically always ends you up in a spiritual tradition because there are no good solutions for addiction, the recovery rates are horrendous, and the best solution is going to a 12-step program. And even 12-step programs don't have that great of outcomes. But what a 12-step program ends up being is a window or an entry point into spirituality, but it's a non-secular secular. It's probably not the right words. It is a non-traditional form of spirituality or an open spirituality. You get to choose who your higher power is, what it is, and every single person is encouraged to have a spirituality, and they have many ways that that can work with atheism, agnosticism. So I actually believe that that was my desired entry point into spirituality in this lifetime, that I would come through addiction. My parents also had a pattern of early life addiction and then coming into recovery young. And so I think I must have known that that would happen for me, or that that was hoped that I would have all my addiction young, come into recovery young, and then have most of my life to work on myself. Um, and that's exactly what happened. Both of my parents got clean when they were 18 or 19. My dad's been in AA for 30 years, and I've been in Narcotics Anonymous for, I'll have 15 years in June. So if I stay clean, um, no friends. But yeah, so that was my entry point. I see a lot of souls entering during this period of time to deconstruct Christianity. They're doing a lot of the work to deconstruct. Um, I I know that I've had several lives that were spiritual in nature. My most recent life, I was a part of a fundamentalist sect, and I want to say it was Pentecostal. I think they are the ones that speak in tongues, but my previous life, I was like this very isolated, unmarried, for the times, it was like the 40s and 50s. I was in my prime around the 1920s. Just like I was kind of single my whole life, and I was a loner, and I didn't have much human connection, and I had just like really deep belief in God, and I was like really devoted to Christianity. So I already got to have like my Christianity life, and I think that I never deconstructed it. I think that I was really heavily dedicated to it. And the thing that happened in my past life that I feel like I'm correcting in this life is that I had sworn off all possessions to God. And I said, I will always be poor. And I was like really dedicated to the idea of being poor. And I am like working through that in this life, learning how to accept abundance, learning how to value things properly. And I've been given so many placements that help me really value possessions, really enjoy them, and have more of a childlike nature, because the past life I was so like rigid and tight, and I have brought that rigidity in, but it's not my energetic design. So I'm like working through that deep sense of having sworn that I would be poor in order to dedicate myself to God, which is not a it's not a thing I believe anymore, that you have to swear off all possessions in order to be holy. But anyway, that is my background. And Narcotics Anonymous 12 step will encourage you to go on a spiritual journey. The first book that I read was The Power of Now. I read A New Earth. I read some of the writings of Thich Nhat Hanh, so I kind of started with Eastern religion and then I moved into the more woo-woo stuff. I have ended up in more witchy areas, I'm kind of like an earth witch. The more that I get to know myself, I kind of like, I feel like really resonant with fairy energy, gardening, herbalism, that's kind of my vibe. And the energy fields of the earth. When I do my intuition, I work really well with energy cords, with chakras, that's the stuff that makes sense to me. And though I would love to be the kind of psychic that can like work with aliens or past lives or like remove spirits from houses, like I love all that stuff, I don't seem to have that power. I work with like the meat. I can help you get the trauma out of the meat, which is a harder thing to do, um, in some ways. So anyway, let's see, did I fully answer that question? Did you have you been in any particular spiritual tradition? No, I'm kind of sad that I didn't learn anything about the Bible. Like my parents had no belief at all. I would go to church sometimes with my grandparents on Easter kind of a thing. I wish I knew more of the Bible stories because you don't realize if you don't grow up in it that there's so many that are just like people will just say like, like the loaves and the fishes, and I'll be like, I don't fucking know what that means. Like I wish that I did because I swim in a lot of philosophy and just like books from the past where Christianity was way more common and like everyone knows like the stories and I just don't know them, and it would really help me in my philosophy life. So that is my background. Um, can you please talk about death, dying, and loneliness? Yeah. So I have always been very lonely in this life, and I have always wanted to die. I see some old souls sometimes where they don't really value their life here. They kind of wish they could go back home. And that's kind of how I feel, is like I know that this is not the only place. I want to go back to the place where it's easier, where I just get to fly around and like I get to just like create a garden if I want. And on this plane, like I have to plant the seeds and water them and like make everything so solid. And I see so many old souls and energy workers that are like so frustrated with how hard it is to make things happen here. So, yeah, I've always felt like I missed home and I just like didn't really want to be here and it was very begrudging. That's why I work with my sponsor. My sponsor, she has very similar spirituality to me, and she really loves her life, and she'll say things like, "Oh my God, I'm in my 70s. Like I don't have much life left. I'm like so excited to live these years, and I'm just like, man, I've been like, ugh, there's 50 more years, I've always felt that way. And in my earlier years, in my addiction years, my addiction started when I was 13 and went till I was 18. I really had a general self-destructiveness towards life. Not only was I like putting things in my body that could kill me and could really hurt me, but I had a disregard for my own safety. I would just walk across the street without looking, and I was just like, can fate please just bring me back to the good place, to the warm place? And so, yeah, I've kind of felt that I was born against my will, and that I've spent a long time trying to recover the will to live. I think that I have the will to live today. I think that I have hope. I have a general sense of like living. One of the things that kept me alive for many years, because I had years where I was like suicidal, especially in my addiction. What kept me alive during that time is that I have a deep belief that whatever the lesson that we're learning in this life, if we exit, which is always an option, we tend to come right back. Whereas normally you get like 50 years of rest, and then you have good planning, and then you can like ease into it. A lot of the time, from the soul planning books I've read, this is particularly from Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Love, and I think Your Soul's Destiny, all written by the same guy. They would talk about the people who took early exits when they weren't supposed to. They would come right back. They would like almost immediately, they wouldn't get the 50 years and they would have to learn the same lesson. So I've always just been like, if I take an exit, I'm gonna have to come right back and do this thing again. So in the most resentful way. And I've heard Louis C.K. talk about this. I've always loved Louis C.K., but he's like, fine, I'll keep doing it. And that's kind of how I felt. So that's how I feel about death. I cannot wait. And I probably am going to live a long time. I don't feel that I have a short life, unfortunately. To some extent, I'm afraid to die. I've had a lot of body anxiety in this life, so it's interesting. I'm not afraid of the actual death, but the death process is kind of scary to me. However, I've been given this image that I think is a really good image. It is death is kind of like getting out of a pool, and birth is like getting into a cold pool. So when you get into a cold pool, it's like, so being born is actually way more painful and way more startling. Getting out of a cold pool, it almost just feels like a relief or a release. Um, and so I think that that's probably what the death process is like. And we've all died many times, in my belief system. So yeah, that's what I think about dying. Loneliness, yeah, I feel tremendously lonely. I have not felt very seen in this life. I've not felt that I have many companions. Now and then I get these people that see me, that are passing by, and I love to get those times. But yeah, I have not felt particularly seen or known by people. And I think that's something about my energetic design. I don't think that that's true of every light worker. I feel relatively more seen by people who are like me, people who are wise, people who are old souls. But in general, yeah, I don't feel like anybody's ever seen the whole of me, and that's very lonely. And so I try to do my work to see myself and to get to know myself because I am satisfied by that. Um, Very good. And the last question at 56 minutes. Uh, Linda Me 22565 on Instagram. You talked about Trump being removed from office or not being in charge. Is the person replacing him going to be JD Vance? So I have felt for a while now that for some reason Trump just becomes irrelevant. And there's been like several plots that have not really come through to assassinate him. There was one that I felt really strongly in March, and I thought for sure, I was like, ooh, that's going to happen like this week. And didn't happen. So I feel that Trump will be removed from office either through death or through actual holding him accountable. I feel very strongly that the election was fraudulent, and that is known on the internal side. And I think that it's being investigated, and they are, I think they have the evidence, and they're waiting to bring it forward for some reason legally, maybe. This has to be done carefully because Trump is in power, and so he will try to squash it if if this is implemented in the wrong way. So I think that behind the scenes, a lot of high up politicians have been informed that the election was in fact fraudulent. Isn't it so funny that narcissists will accuse people of doing the thing that they're actually doing? Like Trump constantly accusing the Democratic Party of electronic election interference when that's actually what he did. It's so weird how the human mind works. But anyway, so I think that he will be removed from office at the end of 2025 or early 2026. And I have a feeling that Kamala Harris will sort of become the rightful president. There were so many psychics at the time of the election that thought for sure Kamala would win or that Trump would not be actually inaugurated. And what I understand that, I was like, huh, that didn't happen. But what I understand that discrepancy to be is that Kamala actually did win. And so that's what the misunderstanding was in the energy. Um, but yeah, I think Trump will be completely ineffective. And I don't know, he's been looking like shit lately. I'm just like, is he gonna die of natural causes? I feel like he's gonna die soon. But I don't think that JD Vance will replace him. I think that it will be the the Democrat. And I think that this period of 2025 of Trump doing absolutely everything that Project 2025 wanted has been a lesson for those who would vote for radical politicians in the future. I think that Trump's legacy is going to be very negative. I don't think that his tactics will be upheld. I think that this will absolutely gut the Republican Party in a lot of ways, and I think the coalition will have to reform around different lines. I think that this is pulled the sheet off of Christian nationalism. Um, you know, for so long, probably since Reagan, we've been having these discussions about like, is what the Republican Party doing bad for the country? Like, is this actually bad or is it good for the economy, for example? And this has been such a wonderful example and demonstration of just like, oh yeah, this is real. Like, it helped a lot of people wake up and see what the reality of this was. And so they're going to have a really hard time getting people to get behind a lot of the same rhetoric that they have in the past. Ultimately, it's not going to be any easier for Kamala because she represents the establishment, and most of the country is reforming around a new establishment. Younger people coming into power. I can't wait till the millennials are mostly in power. We're going to have a really different approach to a lot of things, and our society is fundamentally changing. Our economy is fundamentally changing. Workplace organizations are going to change. The power is going back to labor. Labor is fundamentally changing. I think that we're going into a post-labor sort of system. We're having trouble employing people because our technology is so good that we actually can't create jobs and we don't need people to work anymore. And that's such a different thing than the past problems that society has had. Usually, the problem that society has is how do we compel people to work? How do we make them desperate to work? And at this particular time, we have plenty of people who are desperate to work, which is usually the problem. People are too regulated. People have the communities are too strong. People are too happy. They won't go to work. They can't be compelled. We have plenty of people compelled right now, but we actually have no reason to employ people. So that's the relatively easier shift, I think, for the economy to make, but we're going to have to figure it out. Um, and a lot of this is going to be around the morality of like, how do we find value in people and how the individual finds value in themselves. This is one of the things he's talking about in the ordeal of change. How does the individual find self-esteem without productivity? If I don't have my job, if I'm not working every day, how do I feel good about myself? And that is everybody's responsibility. Go out and get a frickin' hobby, get a community, get a way that you contribute to society that's not your 40-hour-a-week job. Because guess what? If you didn't have your 40-hour-a-week job, you might feel a little bit like a bump on a log with nothing to do and no purpose. So, God damn it, everybody go get a life purpose that's not working 40 hours a week being like some sort of tech supporter. But yeah, this is a really interesting period, and that was a long way of saying I do not think JD Vance is going to be anywhere near the presidency. I think that it will most likely be Kamala Harris coming into office around early 2026. So that's the long form show. Please post your questions in the comments. I think that I'll do one of these per week. And yeah, I think this is going to be really cool. And thank you for being here with me this morning with my electric blanket.